So with the event over on JP looking like it's coming to its story side conclusion, I mean, I've collected my grail, I've gotten my lore. That's usually the hallmark of the event coming to its quote unquote end. Obviously, you can still farm the free quests and whatnot, but we've gotten a second banner and we have a new unit that's coming out with that. We did know this guy was going to be coming out because they showcased him in the event, but we didn't know if maybe it was going to be like the Typhon and Theseus, or is going to be a rerun for some of the 5 stars, like say Taigong and Koyanskaya with Theseus featured on the banner, which is obviously what we got. Now, I'm still holding out hope that maybe we see Typhon for like New Year's or something. That's why I have not really gone in and like summoned on this banner, even though I do like what this guy is doing. If you checked out my video a couple of days ago, kind of speculating what Theseus could look like, the main thing that I wanted this guy to be is a strong free-to-play option, because low rarity sabers are in a very awkward position. You have people like Caesar who can do some decent damage, but realistically aren't really up to par with the current standard. And Bedivere is still pretty solid, but he's story locked. I mean, my Bedivere on JP is still NP1 to kind of put in perspective, and I've been playing over there for 2 years. So this is another very good free-to-play option, because as you can see, he is not limited, he's not story locked, he's not even an event drop, right? He's going to be on every single banner, which is very, very strong. In fact, it puts, ironically enough, just the art's position for their low rarity sabers in a very solid spot, because you have Jason, who's kind of like a baby Muramasa, and then you have Theseus over here, who's just like a good all-rounder. Now, you may come over here and look at, say, his damage chart and be like, well, he's really low, like he's not doing as much damage as Caesar, and he's not doing as much damage as like Bedivere, who's kind of like the golden child for like the low rarity sabers, right? But if you consider that his damage isn't that far below theirs, and he's got 2 power mods, and his skills are more in line with modern FGO design principles, I think this guy is going to be very, very solid, and I'm very excited to get my grubby little mitts on him. Although, as would be expected if you guys know me, I have very bad luck when it comes to going for low rarity servants on banners. I've been throwing tickets and stuff at the banner, not really getting anything. I mean, I still don't have Mori on NA. My Izo is still NP2 over there on NA as well, so I just have really bad luck. I probably won't have this guy NP5 for like the next 3 years, and or like whenever these servers decide to go down. But just looking at some of his skills, everything here is just very solid. This is going to be a very easy servant for you to use. As you can see here on his first skill, just solid arts buff for 3 turns, no restrictions, no weird stuff going on. You're just getting a strong arts card buff to buff up your damage, to buff up the NP gain of your different arts cards and whatnot. His hits themselves are already very solid. His natural NP gain is fine enough. Nothing crazy, you know, no like extra bonus arts buff over here. But again, 4 hits on a single target NP, not bad, right? Like, so this 30% arts is going to be good enough for him. A 20% battery, maybe we could have gotten a little bit more, maybe jump that up to say like a 30% or something, but do also keep in mind that this does put him in the range that if you need somebody for say 90 plus or 90 plus farming, or you need just one guy that can kind of just hit a really hard like Lancer or a Berserker or something, this puts him in that Append skill range with double Castoria, because even with just both of the Castoria's charismas, he's getting 60%. He's going to give himself 20%, and if you want to invest in his Append skill, that's already 100%. So I do like that they've kind of put that in there, if that's kind of their philosophy when making this guy, because as a free-to-play, you should have just a numerous amount of coins for this guy. You'll be pulling him on different banners, and you know, you'll not have a really hard issue, you know, in getting the Append skill done, right? So I do like that they build him that way. Obviously, starting charge CEs will make it to where you don't have to use the Append skills and stuff, but I do like that it's built in that way. If say there's a Lotto CE that doesn't have starting charge CE and you want to use him for a full setup clear or something, I do like that he's built that way. The 10 stars every single turn, I think, is nice, especially when he's also bombing 20 stars on his NP. It's one of the things that I really like about, say, Estrella as an arts DPS, is that they're able to pretty much fund all of their own stars by themselves, right? Which makes them very strong, because Castoria, who you really want to be bringing, doesn't really provide stars for your party, right? I mean, you could slap a 20-30 on her, but if you don't have 20-30, I mean, you're up a creek. You could bring Lady Avalon, but I mean, who has Lady Avalon? Not me. She's come out like 3 different times. I still don't even have her, right? So maybe if you're just simply unlucky, you don't have Arts Merlin running around, and, you know, obviously Tamamu's not really doing anything for stars. So it's just nice when these arts guys can fund all their own stars, especially because Theseus is doubling as a crit servant, which is one of the gimmicks I kind of looked at these guys. I was looking at, like, say, Caesar, Bedivere, and Theseus because they're quick, Buster, and Art single target, you know, free-to-play sabers. And Caesar over here kind of has the crit niche on lock, right? Like, that's one of his things that he's got going. But one of the things that I like about Theseus is he's kind of also stealing that from him as well, because he's building up crit damage every time he fires his NP. And as an art servant, you should be more consistently finding his NP than, say, finding Caesar. So he realistically should, over the course of 3 turns, out damage him, especially like borderline guaranteeing his crits, being able to provide 10 on his first skill, 20 on his NP over here, any in a Brave Chain, plus stacking this. I mean, once you get to 2 NPs, you have 100% crit damage. That's Merlin's hero creation, but for 3 turns, right? Like, you get that, that's insane. And then you could build up to 150%, and if you're, you know, getting good RNG, like with a good Melusine run, you could just kind of keep this going on. You could probably fire like 4 NPs in a row, especially plug sitting guys in and out, so you could really keep the crit damage flowing in, which I really do like. Then moving over to his second skill, this is just kind of like a standard .jpeg, good crit damage skill for an art servant, bombing another 15 stars, which we like to see. So if you are a little bit low between the first skill and the NP, you're going to have more stars going into circulation. It's also immediate stars if you want to pair it with, say, a star bomb CE, which I do like. And then it's obviously prioritizing his arts crits, right? So after firing the first NP, he's already going to be at 100% art crits damage just because of this on its own, and it's going to make getting those arts crits, you know, to refund your NP that much easier as well. So you should just be like firing his NP very, very consistently, especially if you're going to use him in, say, like a solo type setup. Now, do keep in mind, he does not have really any survivability, spoiler alert. So if you are going to use him as like a solo strategist to like kind of just burst the enemy down, I suppose, which I don't imagine he'd be that bad at doing. He's built really well to do that, but just keep in mind, you know, when you take those hits, you're pretty much just taking those hits. Like, you're not really getting any way to really keep the fight going. Maybe pair him with like Atlas Academy to at least give him like an invincibility or something, or really refund his skills, because he's gonna need that. But even in art setups, right, with Castori and maybe even Lady Avalon, if you're lucky, he should perform rather well, because when his arts cards do appear, he's going to crit on them, and he's going to get some good refund back on those. So that's very, very nice. And then finally, there's his charisma, which is, well, I say charisma, but I'm used to calling these charisma. It's just an attack buff for himself, which I would prefer. I don't really care for like a lot of these DPS units having charismas, because it doesn't generally do anything for your supports. Most of your supports are just sitting there to make your DPS look shiny. So I'd rather him have this like 30% attack buff, right, rather than giving everybody a 20% attack buff, because realistically, you're just doing damage with him. Like, yeah, it's nice that Castoria is getting a little attack buff over here, and, you know, DPS Castoria, DPS Merlin, that's all very funny memes, but realistically, you want to do damage with Theseus. He's your main DPS guy. So I like that he's getting the 30% attack buff. Reducing the enemy's attack by 20% for 3 turns is nice. You could be like, well, why is it not like an AoE attack down? He's single target. You're more than likely bringing him to fight a boss, which is generally just going to be them by themselves, and then you're also bombing 15 stars over here. So I like how this guy is built. He's just got good stuff going. Also, lowering attack is like one of the few things that Castoria doesn't do. I mean, she's got a whole smorgasbord of effects that she's able to hit the party with, but lowering attack is not one of them. So it's kind of nice that you get to interact with the I guess the bosses in a bit of a different way. Now, a lot of them have like higher debuff resistance or just straight up debuff immunity, so you might not see it all the time, but it is just kind of a nice thing he's able to do. Now, let's talk about his power mods, because first and foremost, this one is only for Demonic Beast Servant, so it's a little restrictive, but I mean, you've got a couple of Lancers you can bring him to fight in here. You got a couple of Berserkers, so that's nice enough, you know, if you really want to get super effective plus power mod. But realistically, any of these guys, aside from, you know, the Barghest over here, who's an archer, you could probably bring him neutral, and he should be able to cook rather well, because he's not only going to do really good damage with his NP because of this power mod, but remember, he's also just going to smack them upside the head with these massive crits, because again, his arts crits are already starting at 100% between the NP and the second skill, and he's got stars on all of his skills. He's got stars on the NP. You should be absolutely on flood with all the stars he's providing. But then he also has a giant power mod, which applies to the servants and also a couple of enemies. So Again, if you are going through some 90++ content and they decide to throw, I don't know, some large like 500k Oni in the first slot or in the second wave or something along those lines, he can absolutely chunk that guy. And he's going to be very good for the few times they decide to bring them around. But if you're also more of a free-to-play player, there's some bosses, as you can kind of see in here. You know, Kiara's got the giant trait, which I really wanted to get my own Theseus and run up in there and smack Kiara with Theseus, but not really having any luck with, you know, pulling him on the gacha right now, so I'll probably do that later. But you got Megalos, I believe it is. You know, you got Surtur, their bosses that people can kind of struggle with starting off in the game, which is kind of nice that you can actually use them for some practical applications. I mean, this mud dude always appears in Guda Guda events, so next time we get one of those, I wouldn't be surprised if we could just bring him to smack that up. But also the servants add a little bit, you know, to who he's able to hit. You can see he's double dipping into people like Ibuki over here, who's not only a demonic beast servant, but is also just a giant servant in general. Also, you've got people like Ivan in here, who is a Lost Belt 1 boss. If you're struggling with the King Protea quest in the CCC main interlude, right? The one where she just like kind of just stacks buffs all over the place. As you can see, he's now a really good option to bring to that one. So I do like what they've done with this servant. I think they made him a very, very strong free-to-play option. Would you ask me if I say that he's like the best free-to-play Saber to use? I'd have to toy around with him a little bit, but I do think I'm going to come to the conclusion that I like him more than Bedivere. Bedivere's first skill is really nice, but I think the combination of Bedivere, it's harder to get extra copies of him, whereas Theseus is on every single banner, and his skills are just all very nice. He just feels, or at least looks like he's going to be a very good servant to use. Again, haven't got to test him out myself yet, but he just looks like on paper that things are going to look very, very nice when you use this guy. But again, I'll kind of get back to you guys if, you know, I start testing him out and he's just horrifically bad, and if he's just like denied all my expectations and everything, I'll make a follow-up video, be like, no, this guy's terrible. No, it's completely wrong. But looking at all of his effects and everything, and looking at, you know, even like, you know, just the stats over here, and kind of I'm imagining how I would use this guy. The only thing I don't like is that he doesn't have any survivability, but they made him arts, which you're going to pair with Castoria, who's got targetable invincibility for a turn. She still has the solemn defense, which is still like one of the best defensive, if not the best defensive buff you could have in the game. It's just really very well designed, I feel. Like, I just like everything and how they've kind of pieced this guy together. I mean, even the fact that you can take him to 100% using the append skill as a, you know, non-limited, non-story, you know, locked different, you know, free-to-play servant, it should actually be really easy if you want to invest in his append skill. I mean, because even as a 3-star, it's going to be very cheap to unlock the append skill, although I guess we don't have the details of what he actually needs right now. So I don't know, maybe it's going to be like, no, you actually need like 100 dragon fangs to get it. It's like, all right, well, maybe it's not that cheap. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I think this guy looks really solid. I'll get back to you guys if I turn out to be horrifically wrong, but we'll see. We'll see. But with that being said, leave a like on the video, subscribe for that daily FGO content, and I will catch you guys on the flippity floppity.